have a right to choose. I will explain throughout this debate why, and regardless of our idea of whether it's moral to terminate a pregnancy or not, one thing I must make absolutely clear. I don't want to get into a discussion about a variety of moral equivalencies. For example, I don't want to have a discussion about if I condone abortion, that means I also condone something like necrophilia, for example. It's a false equivalency and has no basis in this debate. I also don't want to get into a game of definitions. For example, if I mention the word sentience, I don't want to spend 20 minutes talking about it and different examples of it. My opponent may try to shift the goalposts to look for some level of consistency or inconsistency to prove his point. Our goal here should be to talk about one thing, talk about abortion, Roe v. Wade, a woman's right to choose, whether she truly does have a right to choose. Everything else, as far as I am concerned, is absolute nonsense. We have to stay focused on the topic we're discussing. That's why we're here. I will acknowledge that life does start at conception. This is scientific fact. My opponent may ask then if the child is considered an innocent life. Well, to put it an end to that, the child is neither innocent or guilty of anything. To ask if it is innocent is an attempt to play a gotcha game. The concept of abortion or termination of a pregnancy isn't about innocence or guilt. Say it otherwise, it's intellectually dishonest. This topic isn't black and white, right or wrong, left or right. It's a very complicated issue, and to just break it down as innocent or guilty, to me, is just flat out lazy in my opinion. To sum up my opening statement, I just want to make myself clear. The majority of arguments I have heard from so-called pro-lifers has been the same thing over and over again. It's not her body. She's killing an innocent life. She could put it up for adoption, or she's just a whore for all of it. What's consistent about them, though, is they all know they do not know the circumstances of this mother-to-be. Based on their indifference, it is clear that they are not pro-life, but in fact, pro-birth. So let's go and get started.
Okay, so I don't know if I actually heard your argument as to like why you support the woman's right to choose. Like, what principle are you arguing here? Is it bodily autonomy? What is it?
It is bodily autonomy, actually.
Okay, so bodily autonomy. Let's just make sure we understand the definition here. Bodily autonomy is one.
Here we go.
No, let's make sure we understand the terms we're using. Okay, that way we don't talk past each other. Fair? Yeah. Okay. So bodily autonomy, basically one's own right to self-governance, free of external coercion or compulsion. Fair?
Sure.
Okay. And you're saying you support the woman's right to choose to have an abortion on the grounds of bodily autonomy. Well, my thing is that that's actually contradictory because in order to be in support of bodily autonomy consistently, you would have to acknowledge the bodily autonomy of the human being inside of the womb, which you do acknowledge begins at conception.
Yes.
Okay, so then how do you rectify this?
Okay, so first off, why was the woman having the abortion in the first place?
We're talking about bodily autonomy first. Do you acknowledge the human life in the womb's bodily autonomy?
Why is she having the abortion in the first place?
I would imagine that changes from scenario to scenario. But
that's exactly my point.
They're largely due to convenience purposes, like probably more than 90% of abortions. But again, I want to stick to the bodily autonomy thing. Like, does the human in the womb have bodily autonomy? And if not, why not?
I would say that it could have bodily autonomy, but I would say it doesn't all the way up until it's actually born, because at any given point, that baby could actually develop some sort of a medical condition that could actually put the mother's life at risk. So if we're going to talk about the purpose of bodily autonomy, right? Basically, what your argument is basically going to say is that, for example, if that baby develops, like, say, for example, mermaid syndrome. Are you familiar with mermaid syndrome?
Nope.
Okay. So mermaid syndrome, like, basically is for like it's an extremely rare congenital development disorder characterized by anomalies of the lower spine and lower limbs. Essentially, it's a condition that could actually put the mother at risk if she takes this baby to term, okay? So my argument essentially is that if this baby develops mermaid syndrome, okay, are you seriously going to sit here and tell me that that baby has more bodily autonomy than the mother does?
Okay, so you're referencing like what would be called medically necessary abortions, if you even want to call it an abortion. Well, those are, again, very fringe, rare edge cases, and we can talk about them. But generally, most pro-lifers, including myself, are not going to object to a medically necessary termination of a pregnancy. But if I'm not mistaken, you would be in favor of an abortion that is not medically necessary, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the 99.99+% of abortions. So are you willing to defend that?
I don't think that's the 99.9%. Actually,
no, it is, and I'm actually just inferring this based on the pregnancy mortality rate. It's like 17 per 100,000, which is lower than driving cars in America, at least. So we're talking about 17 per 100,000 pregnancies results in death. And that's like, I think it chalks up to be about 800 per year in America. But there's 800,000 abortions per year in America. So we need to talk about the other 799,000, which you are in support of. And I would imagine because you don't acknowledge bodily autonomy until birth, that would mean that you support abortion at any point for any reason all the way up to term on the grounds of bodily autonomy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the moment that it travels through the birth canal, it's no longer okay to kill, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what's the significance of the birth canal here?
What do you mean by that?
Why is it that you are afforded bodily autonomy rights simply because you travel through the birth canal?
Because then at that point, the baby, essentially, like once that baby passes through the birth canal, it's considered like a safe birth. We can agree on that, correct?
I mean, it's traveled through the birth canal safely. I mean, yes, but we're talking about why is this human life now afforded bodily autonomy?
Because we can all agree that at any,
prior.
well, we can all agree that at any given point, that birth can actually become very, very complicated due to a medical concern, which you just conceded that that's perfectly okay.
In less than 1% of all cases, yes.
Wait, hold on, wait. Let's hold on, wait. I'm gonna hijack this part. Okay, both of you agree 100% that in the case of medically necessary abortions, you ought to be able to have one at any stage of the pregnancy. With the pro-choicer, I imagine saying it's a woman's right to choose to save her life, and with the pro-lifer saying this isn't even a contradictory position. You have to save one life for another. It's not even like an anti-life, sure. Right? So we both can agree that let's never bring this up again, right? We both agree that that's the case. So let's move on to the elective procedures. Basically, I think is important. Right?
Well,
yes.
Here's what I like to know though, because like I seem to recall that Zen Shapiro actually said that he is against all kinds of abortions. Has he suddenly changed his position on this?
Well, that's why I say like, in terms of a and I know Destiny wants to move on, and I do too, but in terms of like a medically necessary termination of a pregnancy, I don't call that an abortion, because I think when I hear the word abortion, I'm talking elective abortions for convenience purposes. But I do, like I said, I myself and any or most pro-lifers would agree, like in a medically necessary situation where the mother is going to die, that terminating the pregnancy is fine. It's justified. I mean, it's not good, but it's like you got to do what you got to do to save a life or whatever. So, yeah, we can move past this because you support it otherwise. So I want to know, like, why do you support it when it's not medically necessary? And that's why we're talking about bodily autonomy. That's your principle here.
Yeah, well, because first of all, because at the end of the day, it has absolutely nothing to do with any of us in society, correct?
I don't know what you mean.
What a woman does with her, well, it's pretty clear. If a woman has an abortion right now, how does that affect you or I in society?
It's killing a human being.
Well, how does that affect you though?
Okay, so if a woman in I don't know, central Idaho got an abortion, and I had no knowledge of it, no, that wouldn't affect me. But that doesn't mean that it's okay. Just like if a woman got raped in central Idaho, that wouldn't affect me. Doesn't mean it's okay, and it doesn't mean it should be legal. So that's not an argument, unless you would support rape in central Idaho because it doesn't affect you.
Here's the moral inconsistency with that argument right there. You are basically comparing two situations that have essentially nothing to do with each other, because one is a medical procedure.
No, they're not a medical procedure. Because neither of them affect.
Hold on. No, hold on. But here's where you're wrong though, okay? Because one is a medical procedure, correct?
I mean, sure. If you want to call it, I wouldn't call it medical. I wouldn't call it a medical procedure. I would call it killing a human life. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, then you're denying science, because science indicates that it actually is a medical procedure.
To accelerate this, we could make a medical procedure where a doctor illegally operates on somebody to remove their heart, and that would be a medical procedure, but he'd still be killing somebody.
Yeah, if we want to call it that, then fine. But the point here is, the analogy that I made is that neither scenario affects me. It's happening in central Idaho. I don't live in central Idaho. I don't know either party involved. Whether it's an abortion occurring or a rape occurring, neither one of them affect me, but that isn't a justification for either action. Whether they're good or bad, it doesn't make a difference, so it's not an argument.
Well, abortion's legal, rape is not, correct?
Correct, depending on where you are, but yeah.
Yeah, depending on where you are. But the fact of the matter is, like with Roe v. Wade, essentially that it was the law of the land that a woman could terminate a pregnancy. Essentially, well, they kind of changed the terminology over the years. They said that only under extreme circumstances, but they said there was no limitations for a first trimester abortion. I mean, we can agree upon that, correct?
Okay, hang on. I think we're getting away from this because we first started with bodily autonomy, and now you're bringing up like if it doesn't affect you, then just let it happen. I mean, which argument do you want to stick with? Now you're moving to Roe v. Wade. Like, which argument do you want to stick with?